Like, the first thing I thought of was, where's my son? Like, where is he? Just running into the house and seeing him on the floor, just the worst scream from your gut that you can ever imagine. Like, I have nightmares of that scream. I hear that scream, my own scream. I just laid there with them for hours because they told me they couldn't bring him back. I feel like I could look down on myself doing what I was doing. Like, it wasn't even true.
Losing a child, it is the worst type of grief that anyone could ever go through. It's not natural. It's not the order of things.
To be able to have that time with him and hug him and, say goodbye was probably one of the greatest gifts God gave me, because I know there's a lot of people that don't get that opportunity. Your grief journey is so unique from anyone else's. You might think that you should be experiencing things that other people who have similar situations are experiencing, but that's so not true. Like, I personally didn't go through half of those 5 stages of grief yet. Remember, this is your journey, and to not compare and to believe in yourself to heal, because sometimes we don't believe that we're strong enough. Grief is going to come at some point, whether you say to yourself, it was a hard ride or it was an easy ride. And so to understand that you love that person despite the challenges that they might have put in your life, and then to allow yourself to heal by knowing, I did everything I could.
Welcome to the Mending Piece by Piece podcast, where we dive into the deeply personal journeys of grief, healing, and hope. Each week, we bring you heartfelt conversations with those who have experienced profound loss, offering insights, comfort, and a sense of community. Whether you're navigating your own grief or supporting someone else through theirs, this podcast is here to remind you that you're not alone. Thank you for joining us on this journey of mending piece by piece. So the dentist, we were talking about that, and for you and going through this recovery with him as a family, how do you feel like it brought you guys closer together, or do you feel like people?
I'm going to be honest. We were as close as you can get. I'm going to be honest. We
And
are
okay,
so close. So if anything, Mikey was pissed. Mikey and we were hurt, but I'm not going to say it brought us closer, but we never ever got less close.
yeah, that you answered my question right there,
Mm-hmm.
because you were already close. So and that's so important. A lot of times when people have that foundation,
Mm-hmm.
that's just going to strengthen it. And it also sounds like you were all communicating, like you at
Mm-hmm.
least were trying to talk and learn and educate and support one another.
Mm-hmm.
How was it, like, because as their mom, did you notice anything? Because this is their older brother. How was it on the siblings? Like, did it impact them in a way? I don't want to say anymore. I want to just leave it at that.
Absolutely. And I can tell you the biggest impact, it's so sad, is guilt, because here's Joey sitting home with mom and dad, and they're going off to college or going to parties and, like, just living, you know? So the guilt for them was overwhelming. But again, they knew it's not going to do anybody any good if we're all sitting around somber, like, well, we can't go out because Joey can't go out. Like, that wasn't good. So I know it was very, very hard on my children to go to college.
Yeah. Did they talk about that, or you just knew it?
Oh yeah, they talk about it.
Yeah. And as a sibling, I kind of suspected guilt. That's one of the things that I know I felt like guilt for all different things, but guilt, you know, like you're saying the recovery, but also like, why me? Like,
Mm.
or why him and why not me? Or
Mhm.
like when you're seeing anyone you love struggle that much, it's really hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And nobody can fix it, so there's not a sacrifice that you can make that you would
Hmm.
to fix it, and that's really hard.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier the Naranon, and that was something that like you went to every night and helped you. You didn't speak in the beginning. And I'm just curious when you said like you couldn't even speak. Could you talk more about that? Because I think it's really important because I know other people are going through very similar experiences,
Mhm.
and to know that they're not alone and they're not crazy. And
Mhm. Um, well, it that those symptoms started when Joey was in high school and I got the call that he was in
mm,
trouble because of weed, and I was just like, "What? What are you talking about? Like a smoker? Like what?" I didn't really understand what weed could do for him. It was really helpful for him, and full disclosure, some of the people in the office at the high school were like, "I understand, Joe. I understand how this is helping you." Not all,
yeah,
believe me, not all. But anyway, that was very hard for me because they would they would call from school and you'd have to talk on the phone and you'd be like, I don't want to talk about this. Like I don't even know what's going on, or I don't understand it. And then when the arrest stuff happened, I just remember going to that lawyer, and I, I was trying to tell him what happened, but I was so completely broken. And he pieced it together. But the second time we met that lawyer, I was with Joey now, and he looked at me and he said, "I'm not gonna lie, I don't even recognize you.
wow,
I know who you are, but having your son next to you now and knowing that he's safe," he said, "you must be back to yourself because you are not the same person who was in here a month ago." But anyway,
did you realize that?
oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, it was told to me since I was such you know, I'm not going to say naive, but you understand, I just didn't know anything. It was told to me if I didn't get in Naranon rooms that I wasn't going to learn from other people, and that was a big part of, healing and learning. And so, getting in those rooms, yes, it does that, but it also opens your ears to all of their horrific stories. And I just every night I knew I had to be there, but it was just killing me to think, and this is going to happen to my son, and that's going to happen to my son, and
Mm,
my son's going to feel that way. And it, so, you'd go around the room, and when it would get to me, I would just kind of like, no, I'm not ready. Cause I couldn't, first of all, speak without crying. Um, but after about 2 years, and Joey was actually not falling into some of those habits I was worried about. After about 2 years, I was finally able to talk coherently, without constantly crying and not being able to like people to understand what I'm saying.
yeah. And what happens in our brain is too is like you're just to make it basic in this lower brain state too. And a lot of times when we're in that very emotional piece, like our amygdala kind of hijacks it, our brain, we can't connect to that cognitive piece, the one that forms words.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't realize with grief and going through like what you were going through before, because you were grieving all along, just a different way.
Mhm.
You may not be able to speak. And that was so important. I wanted you to share because it's very common and a lot of people don't understand. And people supporting people going through this don't understand.
Mhm.
And that the lawyer saying, I don't even recognize you.
Mm.
Like, you're like a whole different person, like, that's how much it can just shift how we look, how we react, how we behave. Like, you were totally just in trying to kind of survive and weren't able to get that stuff out.
Yep.
And then he's next to you, you felt a little safer.
Mhm.
So Naranon was one thing that definitely helped you. You're talking about an emotional toll that this has had on you through while he was going through recovery. What else helped you kind of regain your voice?
While Joey was in recovery, while Joey was still with us, my family, I mean, basically we were just like huddled together for the biggest game of our life, you know,
Mm,
and we were willing to do whatever we had to win that game. So, I talk about my Angie and Mikey and Joe, and I'm telling you, they are just unbelievable in how we would support each other.
yeah. And that's so important. Again, for people listening, to have your tribe. That's my new saying right now.
Right.
But to have that support system where you know that you can just be yourself or just break down and, to go through this together. So
Right.
having them and going back to the Narnon, like, that's what I love about the 12-step program is you don't have to talk, but you're still gonna get a lot out of it, and you can get the love and the support that you need
Mhm.
without even opening up your mouth.
You're right. Yep, you're right.
Yeah, yeah. So, tell us, if you want, like, what was going on when Joey passed, or, ho like, how did you find out? Because 'Cause I'm sure that had to be absolutely so traumatic. You were grieving, like I said, you've been grieving and mourning and struggling emotionally with all this because 'cause you're watching your son struggle and the pain he's in, so you're grieving right along with him, and
Mhm.
now you find this out.
So, Joey, we were still having a great time together. You know what I mean? Like, I had mom dates with him all the time. At this
Oh,
point,
wow.
when he turned 24 and had hit recovery for the, I'll say 10th time, going to an inpatient place, um, long story short, he finally made a decision that he was old enough and, ready to live somewhere in a recovery house. And Father John Sabino is from South Philly, and it was recommended that Joey talk to him, and he became Joey's second dad. So, for months now, Joey was in South Philly and he had lost his driving privileges. So I would come and get him for shopping. We would go out to dinner and, we would have family outings together, and it it was beautiful. Like 2 weeks before Joey passed, we had a big family party at my sister's house. Like, just looking at those pictures, he was just so beautiful. He was just on the outside doing so wonderful, and it just goes to show that we just don't see the mental part. And so, the night before Joey passed, we were out shopping and he had told me he hurt his back and it was really bothering him. And that was something he wouldn't have told me before, because he would have known that, when somebody's hurting and they're in addiction, they know real quick how to fix that pain. But he shared it with me, and I was like, I'm really sorry. I mean, he was kind of limping around while we were going shopping. And so the next morning was Overdose Awareness Day. And
And did you know that at the time?
yeah,
Okay.
two of my friends, I wasn't celebrating it for anything. I wasn't like talking about it.
Right.
Two of my friends, their sisters, they lost two brothers,
Mm.
and we were spending the day with them. And they always invite our whole family. We're all very close. Joe and the the husband of my one friend. they grew up together, they're lifelong friends. And so um, it was just hard for Joey to come. He just wasn't feeling himself. His back was really hurting. So we were talking on the phone the whole day, and he was, talking with the friends at this party. And I wanted Joe to be able to like relax and have fun with Chris during this party. So I was kind of like keeping an eye on like not drinking or anything and just sort of hanging out, letting Joe have a good time, my husband, and keeping in touch with our kids and everything. And then it was like 11 o'clock that night now. And as soon as I looked at my phone, I have John Sabino's name in my phone as Dad 2, because he was like Joey's second dad. And as soon as I looked and it said Dad 2, I just thought, I don't want to answer this. I really just don't want to answer this. And he said, you need to come right away. And so we flew there, and, there's ambulance all around. And I laid with my son on the floor probably for, I don't know, hours. I just laid there with him for hours because they told me they couldn't bring him back. And he honestly looked so beautiful. It was just like we were just laying together in a dream. Like I feel like I could look down on myself doing what I was doing. Like it wasn't even true, but that's how it all happened. And to be able to have that time with him and hug him and you know say goodbye was probably one of the greatest gifts God gave me, because I know there's a lot of people that don't get that opportunity.
Yeah. That's I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Take a deep breath, because just, you're feeling it, and like you said, it's like you could look down, that's part of our grief process, is how it's still kind of real in our body, so make sure you're breathing, because that's a lot. And you said when you got that call, did you have a feeling? You said, "I don't wanna answer it," but did you just, like, have any kinda instinct of like, "Oh, this isn't good," or
It was exactly what I did with my dad. It was the same exact thing.
wow, okay.
And my friends were so worried about me driving because they said, "Aunt, you are shaking so much. Like I don't think that you should drive there." That we were with all during that day. Um, I couldn't control that. I don't know what that was, but I was like, "Oh no, I'm driving." And just the whole time I just kept telling myself, he's we'll go to the hospital and just take care of whatever we have to take care of. I remember screaming a scream that no mother should ever have to deal with releasing, but I definitely swore to myself that it was not going to be his passing.
Wow. And the way you just said that scream, I've heard that before from other people. Was that when you got the call? Was that after it?
That was when I, so Father John met us outside. John Sabino, he met us outside, and just shaking his head. And like the first thing I thought of was, "Where's my son? Like, where is he?" And so just running into the house and seeing him on the floor, just the worst scream from your gut that you can ever imagine. Like, I have nightmares of that scream. I hear that scream,
Mm,
my own scream, all the time.
okay. Yeah, losing a child, it is the worst type of grief that anyone could ever go through. It's not natural. It's not the order of things, and that's who I've heard it from actually is parents, and that's why I was curious, like, you know, when that was, and that's something that the way you said it too, like, it's like a scream like you've never even heard, like, where did that come from, kinda?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, so much pain, and And I appreciate though what you said, like as much just talking about so painful, and I know with loss, like you can kind of not like you can relive it, but like you're feeling it again. But you said something in there like I had that chance just to lay there and be with him, and you found something in that. As painful as it was, you were able to find something in it that was like, I'm
Gratitude.
yeah, that I can have this. Yeah.
Yep. That's how
Yeah.
we survive on gratitude, you know? There's always
Yeah.
something that you can be grateful for.
Hmm. Yeah. So you're there. Who was able to support you during this? Because like I just said, like losing a child is like it's like no other grief. So were people able to support you?
Mhm. Yeah, of course. I mean, right away, Joe called a friend who is very familiar with our situation. Um, of course, my girlfriends and family that were at the party were calling. I was I was in another world for all of those hours. I wasn't
Yeah.
talking with anybody, but just having, Joe's friend Scott there to intercept phone calls people were giving us and, help my husband and help me and, you know, because it was that day. I remember Scott, he had just given a speech at an overdose awareness walk, and so he took his purple pin off of himself, you know, and put it on me, and that was when I was just like, "Geez, what are the chances that this could happen to us on this day?"
Yeah. And it's like a this is a club you don't want to join, right?
Right,
You don't want to be part of it.
right, right.
And you had said earlier, like that compared to the grief that you've been through, like this grief is a new type of grief. So how would you say that's different, sorry, from what you previously experienced?
Uh, Definitely because of all the secondary losses. We just lose Joey every day to something different. Like we just keep losing him over and over again to all of our secondary losses, and you know we don't focus on that. But you know, I loved my mom, I loved my dad, and you reached a point where you were stronger as time went on. Don't get me wrong, I'm definitely stronger, but like I wouldn't be crying 5 years after my mom passed. She had a long beautiful life. Same with my dad. I don't know, I was used to being like in deep grief for about a month with the um losses that I had before, and honestly, I don't even know if within a year I was really dealing properly yet, just kind of thinking this is totally a dream. They say that your second year is the worst, and man, that was a really hard year.
Yeah. It, the second year for most people with this type of loss and loss to suicide, it rings true. Like that second year is like a year. Like, you think you're like, okay, and I could breathe maybe a little bit, but this it just seems like it's so intense. And
Yeah.
then, you know, so we're coming it's 5 years?
Yes. It'll be 5 years in August.
Yeah.
Or it is August 31st.
Yeah. So 5 years. And I want to point out, like, y you're gonna be mourning or grieving the rest of your life. Like, people need to understand that. There's no getting over grief. There's no, like, you just wake up one day and, "I am better, and I've healed, and it will continue, and I appreciate you saying, like, it's these losses, like, that you notice every day or these, like, secondary losses, because that's where for a parent and for mom, like, yes, as things are coming up, like, you're feeling it differently in a different way, and I don't think a lot of other people, unless they've walked through that. I understand it from a different perspective only because I work in this field. I don't understand it personally, but it is something that, getting invited to a wedding or a graduation, like, it comes up again and again.
Mhm.
How do you cope with that?
Um, you know, my husband has this great saying, and let's represent Joey well,
Mm.
you know, and that's what we try to do.
Yeah, that I like that saying, and kind of going with that saying, you've part of your journey and the way you've been coping and what's helped you is you've immersed yourself in educating other people, supporting other people, helping other people as you are going through it. Can you tell us, like, more about that and what you're doing? Because 'Cause you're doing some really great things, and that's how I met you and heard about you and wanted to connect with you because I was like, "Wow," like, you're using your pain and you're kinda pouring it in and finding purpose in it.
Hmm. After we lost Joey, I no longer belonged personally the way I felt in Naranon rooms.
Mm.
And so I found a room that I belong to called Grasp, which is run by Marie.
Who
And
sorry,
Grasp,
who's it run by?
Grasp Marie, uh, Cecilio? No, Marie. But I'll get her
Okay.
last name corrected for you. Um, she and Margie too were running. Marie still runs a group called GRASP, and GRASP is an acronym for Grief Recovery After a Substance Passing. So everyone in these grief rooms are there because they love someone who passed because of a substance. So what I learned in those rooms was how I was really different in my grief journey than a lot of people. A lot of people were really alone.
Mm.
Um, a lot of people were going home to empty houses because, their loved one was the only person that lived at their house. And like, I just couldn't, that was so unimaginable to me. But I was glad that they were coming to the grasp meetings because then we all had each other there. But I remember thinking, um, there's another meeting that I wanted to be a part of, and that was called Bereaved Parents of Delaware County. Um, in those rooms, you have to be a parent, but you could have lost your child to any means. And again, there were people in those rooms that made me personally feel grateful that I was surrounded by support of my family, my extended family, my friends. Um, I never hid what was Joey was dealing with. So all of my friends knew, all of his friends knew, it was, but some people are very alone in this grief. And so I knew have a way of bringing people together and having those kind of resources there so people didn't feel alone. And I reached out to the cemetery where Joey is buried in that St. Peter and Paul Cemetery in Springfield. And I spoke to the gentleman I needed to speak to there, and he thought the idea of bringing everybody together, having a walk, having some kind of awareness was a great idea. We were in COVID. So it couldn't happen with the community. But when I tell you that first walk that we did with just my family and friends and Joey's family, like Joey's friends, and it was beautiful. There were a lot of beautiful signs that I knew I was doing the right thing. And we had that kind of personal walk that first year. And then the next year, an organization called Never Surrender Hope said they would love to be a part of it, thank God, and they endorsed the walk, and we did it again for another couple of years with them. And then I met with the Shevlins, who were a little bit more local to us, and they agreed for the last 2 years to back us as well. So here we are. Yeah.
There's so much in that part. Like, I wrote a couple things down that I wanna touch on, and so it sounds like with this, like, you found a way to honor Joey, and it goes with your husband's, sorry, the sun's in my eyes right now, represent Joey well. So that's how you've
Mhm.
been honoring him, and the pick of the cemetery is, I bet you people are like, "Why would you do it there?" But
It's literally right next to where my son is
is it?
buried. Yeah.
Where, because I went last year.
Mhm.
That's amazing, and I understood why having it there was so important, and I think it's a perfect place, and it's, again, people that are listening, might not know our area, but the one thing that caught my eye was the big sign out there.
Oh, I just put them up last
Did
night.
you? Okay. I was gonna say, I was thinking, have I been past there in a while? And that's how, like, making others aware, like, this is happening, this is out there, and, um, yeah, so you did say, and I wanna go to that, is that, signs, because a lot of people believe in the signs, and you know, you saw some signs that first walk that was like, you're doing the right thing. Can
Mhm.
you share what you experienced?
Oh my gosh. I'm huge on signs. Spiritually, that is such a gift for us. The signs that we get. But that day was raining. Um, and I felt bad because everybody was kind enough to come that first walk, and it was raining. And like I said, I'm so well supported by my family and friends, and I had all the flowers people had sent me because I wanted to put them all out around. So now they're like in the back of my car with the hatchback open so people can see them and be part of them with Joey's picture in there with looking in the back of the car. But anyway, then all of a sudden, when it was time for us to do this walk in the cemetery, these two huge rainbows appeared, and we just walked right under these two huge rainbows. And thank God that we have cameras on our phones today, where we're always carrying a camera, because all of the signs that we get, I can take pictures of. You know what I mean? And we have phones where we can write things down. I remember right after Joey passed, um, Father John had asked his club, the Comfort Club in South Philadelphia, please give this family some advice. And one of the women said to me, write down everything you can, because believe it or not, you'll forget. So, I thank God for my phone. I've written down every dream, not just of mine. I make my family tell me theirs too. And I write down all of our dreams. I write down all of the signs that were sent. Um, they're just so beautiful and encouraging to know that there's no way these signs aren't from Joey. My sister had given me a little plaque, something you can put in the ground. And right after she gave it to me, I said, "Well, this is probably a good spot for it." And I put it in my backyard, and a butterfly just came down, sat on that plaque, just
Wow.
literally as I took like a 5-minute video, just never left, just stayed there. And I was like, "Thank you, Joe. You like your spots."
I catch myself sometimes talking to butterflies, like, there was one recently, and I was like, "Oh, okay, Jeff." Like, and I'm
Yes.
in my
Right.
I'm in my backyard having a conversation, and I'm like, "Someone's gonna lock me up."
Oh yeah,
But yeah.
absolutely.
So that double rainbow, I can really relate to that too, and I'm moving over a little because the sun is really in my eyes. When we were going to my first brother's funeral, we're driving over one of the bridges, all of a sudden into the water. It was in the Keys, like this huge
Oh
rainbow.
right.
And I was like, oh. okay. Like God's promise, right? Like,
Yes, right.
so I think signs for a lot of people are really important. So
Mhm.
I was glad that you shared that. And so you've had this walk. The first year was just you guys, and then you opened it up to other people. And like I said, like last year I went, but 2 years prior, I was like, oh, I got to get there, and I ended up working later than I thought. But then forgot about it. I'm home and I'm sitting outside, but I was emotional because I know what day it is. And I'm by my pond and I'm staring and I go, oh my gosh, that wall. And I like quickly look it up and I'm like, I have time because it's 5 minutes from my house. And I'm so glad I went because I've told
Mhm.
clients to go. And
Thank you.
yeah, it is just to be able to be around other people that have experienced that and then people sharing, but the seeing pictures and yeah, I just thought it was such a beautiful and then I heard you talk a lot. I think your daughter must have shared last year. Somebody from your family got up and spoke. And I just I just thought it was so important because so many people need this. So
Right.
many people think that they're alone and you recognized I'm not alone. I have this great support, but you saw somebody else's additional pain. And in a way, whether it was conscious or subconscious, you were like, we need to make this bigger so other people don't feel alone.
Mm.
I don't know. The reason I'm saying that is because I went alone. And I remember sitting there under a tree after I walked around and saw my brother's picture. And I all of a sudden decided I was going to have a pity party really quickly of like, you're all alone. Look at all these people. And here you sit. You
Mm.
have to go to an awareness event to remember your
Mm.
brother. But I quickly was able to, like you said earlier, like, you're not going to feed that. Like, gratitude. Like, look at all the people that are here with you.
Mm.
Like, and that it was just that being able to shift it. And then somebody like called my name and I turned around
Mm.
and here there was somebody I know and I was like, you're not alone in this. You're not.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And so is it your family? Do you organize it and run it? And is it just you guys? I know you have the sponsor.
Well, so it's our family, and we needed more exposure. There's only so much that we can do. And the Shevlins are just such an amazing family. So I reached out to Christine and Bess from the Shevlin Family Foundation saying, I know this can be bigger. I know we can help more people. I need more exposure for this. And let's face it, every foundation has a lot on their plate, So I just asked them to think about it.
Hmm.
That's all I asked, just to think about it. And last year they came through, and it's just wonderful the exposure that it gets because the Shevlins are involved.
Yeah.
So that means we're helping more
Yep.
people.
You are. And it's important work that you're doing. Bringing awareness. It's not just about bringing awareness. I mean, that is part of it, but it's also a place to be able to remember and honor your Joey.
Right.
And you're doing this in his memory and in his honor, and that's how one way that you're keeping his legacy alive, right?
Hmm. Right.
Would you say that's important for people going through grief like you've been going through? Find a way to honor your loved one. Wait, represent Joey well, represent their loved one well.
Absolutely. I try to tell the Shevlins it's it's really not about Joey at this point. It was in the beginning because that's all I knew. I didn't know any better, but this is about everyone's loved ones.
Mhm.
Like I want everyone to feel it's about all of our family and friends that we've lost. But when you say, do I feel it's important to have events to honor loved ones? That is something that the Shevlins are amazing at. So they have bowling events for, you know, Leanne Sullivan lost her brother, and she puts together a bowling event. And there's softball events for someone who lost their, loved one. And the Shevlins run all of these events for people who want to find a way to honor their children or their friends. And this is something I try to explain to people when I'm at the walk. Like, we are so glad you're here today, but there are outlets for you while you're here that you can speak to somebody and say, my child loved music. He loved playing the guitar. He loved doing this. And the Shevlins, which they have done, will set up, a get together where you can all listen to music, and it's there to honor your son, and sometimes people will make donations to help the Shevlins help others who are in need, and that's all done in honoring your loved one. And that's really important in grief. It really helps people to think, I'm doing something. You see a lot of golf outings that people do for their loved ones. We had an amazing group of friends for Joey, and 2 months after Joey passed, he was an incredible baseball and softball player. They pulled together 16 teams for a baseball, softball actually, tournament. This was 2 months later in November, freezing cold, and we raised thousands and thousands for Never Surrender Hope. And, at that time, I thought that was the greatest thing we could have ever done for Joey. Everybody walking around with their Joey shirts and playing ball in his honor. And that felt really, really good. That really helped our recovery.
Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing that, because a lot of times people are not sure, like, what am I supposed to do? How do I, how, what am I doing with all this emotion? And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, I try to tell people too, you don't have to actually go and start your own event. Like, going to your event was great for me, right? I was able to still honor and remember my brother. Everybody don't got to go out and start like
Right,
something, but I think it's important. Like, how do you? It could be as simple as, lighting a candle on the anniversary, or like
right,
you did at first, it was just some friends or just talking about it. I think talking, going back to what
right,
you shared earlier, using your voice and continuing to speak their name and remember them keeps their memory alive, and they're part of this, and it's helping in our process as we're going.
right.
Yeah. Um,
For going to that walk and having friends and family come to the walk is for some the only time every year that people come together to honor that person. And so it means so much to some people because there's no other time during the year where they're doing things like that.
yeah. And that's where I think too why I wanted to connect with you, because I understood that so deep, because I run the candlelight vigil in our county for those that lost loved ones to suicide on September 10th, Suicide
Mhm,
Awareness Day. And
mhm,
what keeps me going is kind of what you're saying. It was maybe in the beginning, it was about my brother, but it really is about everybody else, because I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. It's 23
right,
years. It's just me and my family. And I remember, I remember where people sit. I can remember them, things that they'll say, or someone coming up and being like, this is the only place I get to say their name.
right,
So it's the same thing. It's giving people hope and allowing an outlet for them. And yeah, just it's important. And I'm glad you're doing this. And it made me, I, talking about guilt with you were talked about it earlier, is like, I always felt guilty. I'm like, I've gone to some other awareness events after this happened, but because of the timing, and I'm like, this is what I've always done, is this other stuff. The guilt of like, oh, you don't honor Michael enough.
mm, mhm,
So finding your event and being able to go to it, and then my mom had his picture and his son's picture on the big, the big thing you hang up there. Uh,
and you see me now.
yes,
Mhm,
and that's just another way too that we can remember and honor. And
mhm.
yeah, I think it's important. So, for those that don't know, August 31st again is International. Is it international or
It
national?
it it is international.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Overdose Awareness Day, and you hold that event, and I know this recording will come out afterwards, but I'm still in the show notes. I want to have the connect where they can connect to you about the event, about the organizations, Shevlin and the other ones that you had mentioned before, because I think that's
Mhm.
important for people looking for resources and what they, you know, other ways that they might be able to get help. So, one last thing. Is there any advice that you would give to parents and or family members that are going through something similar?
The one thing I always tell myself is that um your grief journey is so unique from anyone else's. And so you have to remember that. You might think that you should be experiencing things that other people who have similar situations are experiencing. But that's so not true. Like I personally didn't go through half of those 5 stages of grief yet. And I don't expect that I ever will. I don't have anger. I don't have denial. Some people will have those. So I would I would tell someone that, remember this is your journey. Um, and to not compare and to believe in yourself to heal, because sometimes we don't believe that we're strong enough to heal. But oh my gosh, it is rewarding to know that I've gotten through 5 years. I thought of 5 years as impossible, but I knew I was strong enough. I had good support, so I believed in myself, and here we are.
Yeah. That's good advice. Good advice. Yes, your journey is unique. Even though that someone else might have lost a son the same age, the same way, could even been the same date. Their experience is going to be very different because they're different. They have past experiences, like your past losses have kind of influenced where you're at today.
Mhm.
Um, all different things. So that I appreciate you sharing that because I do think a lot of times people don't realize that and they'll compare, they think they should be doing something. And
Mhm.
another thing that you did share that is a good piece of advice a little bit ago was about writing things down. And I'm glad that you're doing that. And I do encourage people to try to write things down. And because you think you'll remember, but chances are you probably won't remember. And I wish I did that stuff. I told everybody else they should do it. And
Oh.
I never did it. And I have those 2 workbook and journals, and they are
Right,
just for that, like, they're specific prompts or whatever, but it is so you could put those things down so you don't
right.
forget, and I tell people, like you just said about you have your phone, you can take a picture, you put it in your notes, you can do a voice memo, like, record it any way you can because 'cause you'll want to see that later. So I think
Mhm.
that was another good piece of advice. That's why I wanted to tie that in. I think that was
Mhm.
good. Um,
Thank
so is there anything else you would like to share with um, the listeners?
Well, I definitely wanna share the Shevlin Family Foundation. They're on social medias, Facebook under the Shevlin Family Foundation. You could look them up, by going online through Google, things like that. You'll get all of the information about the walk, but you'll also learn about them and what they do. Um, they're carrying us this year through this walk. I mean, they are really carrying us, and I'm so grateful. We're all so grateful, but they are a phenomenal outlet for somebody who's dealing with grief.
Okay, great. All right, and we will have that information in the notes for people. Um, and one last thing that you had shared with me, and you said grief is the price that we pay for loving someone. And I just thought that was so impactful, and I think that that really has a lot that can be said, and I'm wondering, like, how has that perspective influenced your outlook on how you're honoring your son and the way that you can continue to love and connect with other people to help them?
Well, for starters, I know why it hurts so much, because we just loved Joey so much, and that explains why it hurts so much. Um, but if people understand that the relationships they had with their loved one, regardless of, the full 100% of how it was going, because it's not always pretty, you know, and grief is going to come at some point, whether you say to yourself, it was a hard ride or it was an easy ride. And so to understand that you love that person despite the challenges that they might have put in your life, and then to allow yourself to heal by knowing I did everything I could, you know, I did everything I could, and this is the outcome. I've given a lot of people advice that was given to me. There's shoulda, coulda, woulda. Everybody says, I should have done this. I could have done that. I would have done this had I known better. And it's hard to tell somebody, don't think that way, because that's how our minds work. So I've given a lot of people the advice of, you've got 10 minutes. Don't give yourself any more than 10 minutes every day to go through those thoughts. And then after that, you've got to close that part of your brain and move on. But, to tell somebody, don't think about this and don't think about that is not really that great of advice, because we can't stop the thoughts that are coming into our head. It's natural for us to think, could I have done something different? But if you give yourself those 10 minutes every day and then you move on after that and forgive yourself and know that loving someone, loving them hard, is going to make your grief journey a little tough too.
I've said I grieve deeply because I love deeply.
Right.
And that's another thing that you had shared with me earlier, that I was like, oh, I really connect to that. So I appreciate you taking all this time to share your story with me and with the listeners. And if people want to contact you, is there a way that they can contact you? Would you Facebook or?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Since having the walk, I'm not private on Facebook.
Okay.
So,
is it your name?
You're always. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So that it's just first name, last name at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
it's Joey's picture.
Okay, there we go. All right. So we'll have that contact information in case because I know a lot of times people hear a story and they're like, I can connect, and they may want to just reach out, and I just wanted to make sure if that was okay. Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
Again, thank you so much for being here tonight and sharing your story. I know it was really hard, and I really do think it's going to help a lot of people out there listening to know that they're not alone. There is hope, and there's a way to continue to honor and love their loved one and continue that legacy. So thank you, Anne, for being here.
Thank you. I'll continue to mend piece by piece.
Oh, I like that. Thank you for listening to the Mending Piece by Piece podcast. If you lost a loved one and would like additional grief resource to help navigate you through your grief journey, you could purchase Mending Piece by Piece After a Suicide Loss, Guided Grief Workbook and Journal to Heal the Survivor's Heart, or Mending Piece by Piece, a workbook and journal for navigating grief with hope, on both Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Thank you for listening to Mending Piece by Piece podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, and share with family or friends. Until the next time, continue mending piece by piece, healing through grief, one step at a time.